I want to thank everybody for coming out this morning. I know that we are bridging the worlds, right? So we've got, like, you're in Detroit. We are like, one of the blackest cities, hopefully. And we have a lot of power, and I think we don't understand what our power is. But if we can start to bridge the world of black influence, and if we could start to think about not just our buying power, but our influence, and then how do we start to own it, because we don't own it, then we can have some serious conversations. So I want to thank everybody, but I want to tell you who some of these people are. So Fran Westbrook is the CEO and founder of Boulevard Content, which is an ad agency here in Detroit. He's also a longtime friend of mine and my husband's. And then Talitha is with the Downtown Detroit Partnership. You know, we don't even know all the depth and breadth of what Downtown Detroit Partnership does. And I think learning about that is something that we need to understand. And then we have Jason Mercer, venture capitalist. You know, he's Detroit adjacent. He's from Southfield, but lives in Chicago. But, you know, I want to welcome everybody. And then Justin is locally here, but he works for Spotify, and he's the global director at Spotify.
Yeah, how you doing? Again, Jason Mercer. I'm the finance nerd here on the panel, but work in venture capital. Quick thing on that, venture capital is where folks go when they're starting ideas, usually before they've hit a couple $1 million to go and try to get some funds to support their dream. The fund I'm at is called Cleveland Avenue. We're based out of Chicago. We're founded by Don and Liz Thompson. Don Thompson being the former CEO of McDonald's. So we do a lot of food and beverage investments. But as we've gone as a firm that has branched out to a lot more in the food adjacent technology and other spaces. And then we have a $70 million fund focused on supporting Black, brown, and women entrepreneurs. About 70-ish% in Illinois, but the other 25% or 30% across the country. So in my role, it's all about trying to find great folks starting new businesses and support them both financially and strategically.
I'm Talitha Johnson, Communications Director with Downtown Detroit Partnership, and at DDP, what we call ourselves, we lean into the partnership aspect of our name a whole lot. So in order to do any of the work we're doing downtown, we are partnering with so many people to make it happen. So that's a combination of working on the 18 parks and public spaces downtown Detroit. The #1 public square is Campus Martius. For those of you who are not local to Detroit, head over there and check it out. We have our annual tree lighting event. It's a big, big deal. We've worked on the NFL draft last year and so much more. So thank you. Can't wait to share more about Detroit.
Fran Westbrooks, Boulevard is my agency, about 14 years now. Probably been in the agency world maybe 25, and decided to do it on my own. So we have been successful through that. We're right down the street on Woodward in Midtown, just moved there. On the Black-owned block, not just a building, but a block, the Birds and the Mr. George, that whole family owned it for legacy reasons. And just been able to just be a part of the culture as my agency looks to redefining how we show up in advertising, how advertisers engage with us. And rather than preaching from the choir and talk about we understand culture, we're literally on ground level doing events, doing things that is part of culture, which is part of this, and making sure that we represent the culture correctly.
All right, let's jump into it. So Black creativity is profoundly important to both, not just our communities, but to the world. Not just as a source of art, not just as a source of entertainment, not just as a source of sport, but as a driving force for social change. A pillar of cultural identity, it's a major contributor to our overall global economy, and it's a powerful form of expression. So our first question is to our panelists about economic empowerment. Black creativity fuels a thriving ecosystem of Black-owned businesses, creators, entrepreneurs, and we significantly boost local economies. What are your thoughts in terms of elaborating on how Black-owned businesses can significantly continue to boost, and perhaps offering examples beyond just the statistics?
Sure, I'll start on this one. I'm gonna kind of go on a story, but if you think about how some of the largest cities in this country been built, especially some of the black neighborhoods, it started through different industries that were able to funnel into the community and have a multiplier effect. So take our hometown, Detroit. The automotive industries came here, people got great jobs, and then people started making businesses. So we have, it currently do, and in the past had some of the bigger ones, some of the largest black-owned car dealerships in the United States were here in Detroit. We have so many large black companies like Benny Johnson's automotive supplier company. We have things like that. In Chicago, we have the companies that started Soft Sheen and Luster's. When you have those type of large businesses within the community, they have a multiplier effect. Those people create jobs. Those jobs do taxpayers. Taxpayer dollars go into our schools, so on and so forth. Where that comes into what we're talking about from the creative side of things, it's those creatives, those people that do content, that really have those ideas, that create and breed those new businesses that, again, I joke, finance nerds like me want to invest in. And when you have that pairing of communities, black, brown, or whatever, creating new businesses, creating new jobs, creating wealth, it flows into the community as a whole. It has that multiplier effect downstream. Pairing that with, yes, the economics of the financial system is what I think is very important, is what we're talking about today. So that's kind of my long-winded answer of saying, while those two things come together, pairing that creative with economics and how that flows through a city kind of top down, and really could have additional multiplying effects outward.
And I'll add to that, on a local level, I would say that the businesses and the small businesses here hold a lot of our culture. So that's anywhere between our legacy businesses, preserving the culture of our food, like Floods, The Block, Fixins. Baru just opened up. Again, a little shameless plug. For those of you who have not checked it out, I haven't checked it out either, but check it out and let me know about it. And I'll check it out too. But yeah, so many businesses that have been around and so many that are opening, not just downtown and throughout the city as well. But also to the creative class too. There's a creative economy. I just gotta give a shout out to Mama Ngia, who produced our African World Festival for years, just over a decade. And she also produced a lot of our events at Downtown Detroit Partnership, including a tree lighting show, including a lot of the concerts that are downtown as well. But she holds the culture in such an integral way, in making way for people like Amber Lewis, who you guys heard earlier, making way other people who hold the culture locally here are. On a Caribbean front, I gotta shout out Ralph Taylor, who holds our Carnival culture, and Sophie Chu, who kind of holds one of the many people who holds a lot of the Caribbean culture just across Caribbean countries. Here, it's so many to name, but I just want to speak to like how all of us kind of work together to hold that culture, pass it down to the next, and preserve it for the next generation to come.
I know you want to jump on the next question, but since since I did mention The Block and Floods, they started buying that strip of properties in silence. It took them 15 years, couldn't tell anybody what they were doing. They were my first landlord. So back in my day, I used to have a reggae club, and it was in that building in the atrium where the block, where the Garden Theater sits now. And we were the only thing on the block, besides the party rental joint on the corner. And he had to buy that. It was called Trenchtown. That's right. That was right. There you go.
Dang,
Right.
that's the flashback.
Yeah, right.
That's
was me.
a flashback.
Yeah, for sure. That was me. But he bought that block secretly for 15 years. Him and his partner couldn't tell anybody what they were doing. Couldn't say a word. So can you imagine trying to get $50 million over 15 years and you can't say anything to anybody except for the people that's invested? But the bigger part of that is they stepped away. The two men that started it stepped away, and they left it to their daughters and their grandsons. And nothing out of the five of them, nobody's over 40 years old. And they've inherited that property. And that will be a lifelong property with Floods and the rest of whatever else they have. But I think that is the power of economic development, no matter how long. It was a drip campaign, obviously, for them. But that is the power of economic development if you stay true and stay fast to the culture. And that's what they've done across their whole career.
You said one thing I just want to touch upon, and I failed to mention it. You mentioned the concept of ownership, and so do you. I think that's something we'll probably touch on quite a few times. That is the power of ownership, that being able to be patient and be strategic and think not just for one quarter. And I understand a lot of us are struggling, and sometimes you don't have enough bandwidth to think past this week. But if you can push through that and create a plan, and you said 15 years, but now they essentially have an empire, that is the power of ownership and strategic thinking long term, both financially and strategically and culturally.
And just a little bit of data. In 2022, Black-owned employer businesses generated $212 billion in revenue. In addition to that, they paid over $61 million in salaries, and that's 2022. That's not even today, right? So we have to really start to understand what connecting the dots mean. And oftentimes, we don't even seek out that information. So I want to move on to our next one, because we don't have a lot of time. So we're going to talk about community building and healing. Creative expression serves as a vital tool for community cohesion, healing, and education. Beyond the economics, how do public arts initiatives and cultural festivals like Essence Fest, Afrofuture, Afrotech serve as vital tools for cohesion, healing, education within our Black communities? And what have you observed firsthand? I'm gonna let Mr. Justin down there take this one.
Hey, everybody. This is one of the mornings. I won't make excuses, but I'm happy to be here and talk about this, especially coming off of a bunch of things that I do in my day job at Spotify around festivals and supporting the arts, and then what's going on in the city right now, which I think is an incredible thing. One of the things that I talk a lot about with investors in these different festivals, with people who are looking to expand and do music in kind of a broad format with people, is this idea of developing what I call like the bar. It's bar building, right? And when you do a festival like Afrofuture in Detroit, you're also showing that it's possible to do a lot of these different parts in the music business that people don't know about. There are back-end parts of the music business that people are unaware of. There are front-end parts of the music business that people are unaware of. Beyond being an artist, there's a whole bunch of components that go into tour management, festival artist management, and the like, where you could build an entire industry just around that. That needs to be a more apparent thing to folks in a lot of different creative spheres. And I think when you talk about the things that are happening with Essence Festival, when you think about all of the conferences, there's so many conferences that are around that I'm like blanking on the names, Ad Color and things, because I'm in the marketing business, but there are a bunch of these different festivals.
Black Week.
Absolutely, Black Week, which is I need to go to this year. I'm super fake. I know all the people who started that. But the reality is, beyond showing you that it's possible, you get to be around the folks that made it possible, and that shows you not only that there's a direct link with what you do every day, but that can grow into the type of career that you want to have, despite not necessarily knowing what field that career would fall into. And I have these conversations with young people a lot, where it's like, I want to be like what you do. It's like, well, can you imagine if you knew a whole bunch more people like me who did a bunch more things? You have more examples of the things you like to do. And that's something that I feel like beyond the access and the kind of the paywall of the festival, because a lot of these you need to buy a pretty expensive ticket to go to, could be way more accessible via these kinds of things. So if there's a festival that is happening that needs a $100 ticket to go to, but then there's a bunch of talks and things like this around it, well, this gives you the opportunity to get connected in a way that maybe you couldn't have afforded to when you go to the festival. And so that's both my critique of the festival world, which I think that stuff is too expensive a lot of times, and what I think the value it brings to certain communities, specifically when it comes to being aware of where you could go in your life.
That was good? All right. I do want to talk about Black Week for a hot second, because I was going to talk about Essence Fest, but Jason is here, so we won't talk about that. But I am Executive Vice President at Hero Collective. I lead the client partnerships and strategy over at Hero. And we are the agency that produced Black Week, just in case you didn't know. But I think one of the things that's important with a lot of these industry, quote unquote, industry conferences is that they all serve a purpose. Not necessarily saying that their purpose is less important. Some are just here to celebrate Black creativity, right? Some are here to celebrate, the ingenuity. Black Week is trying to move the bar. So I think when we start to look at these conferences, we got to really look at like what are we getting out of it when we do pay our money to go to these conferences. If we're looking for a job, that's the one where you go, where are all the Black people? But understand what you want out of it and what you are looking for that particular conference, that brand of a conference, to do for you. And that's how you start to look at some of these conferences. But let's go on.
I just want to add to that real quick, but we would not have an Afrofuture if we did not have an African World Festival, if we did not have a Caribbean festival here in Detroit, and if we didn't have, we had so many festivals that led up to it, and currently Jerk and Jollof that kind of introduced and kind of, gave us a little bit more flavor of the African and Caribbean culture. That even made way for Afrofuture to come here to Detroit. Because I, just growing up here, we weren't ready for something like this 10 years ago. But those festivals and those events definitely paved the way. So again, with those collective people standing up and making space and putting our voices out there, letting our stories be told, and supporting each other is making it happen.
T. So let's talk about cultural preservation and identity, right? So art reinforces a sense of pride, self-determination, and when I say art, I mean all forms of art, film, et cetera, and belonging. It provides a platform to express the realities of our lived experiences, challenge racist stereotypes, and shape our own narratives, which is crucial for our identity, formation, empowerment, and our ability to matriculate, right? So how does Black art, whether film, literature, music, beauty, fashion, etc., help to challenge those stereotypes and shape narratives for identity formation and empowerment? Talitha, I'm throwing it back to you.
Tell me the question one more time. Say it one more time.
How does we went over this yesterday.
I know.
How does Black art, whether it's film and all the things, challenge stereotypes and shape narratives for identity formation and empowerment?
Yeah, so just kind of piggybacking off of what I'm saying, like those events, those festivals are one of the avenues that we are showing who we are in our essence, telling our own stories and not letting other people tell our stories. People like Hubert Massey, you got Black art and Black history right at our feet in Paradise Valley, right here in Detroit. Another place, if y'all are visiting, and Detroiters, because it's Detroiters who don't know this history, if y'all are visiting, go to Paradise Valley. It's so much of our history there. So many Black businesses in that circle, similar to what he's saying, people strategically buying and supporting each other. So the art, the music, the economics all kind of going together. Additionally, we have Detroit is the place that has the largest Kinara lighting that happens every first day of Kwanzaa, right in Campus Marshall Park or Cadillac Square. It kind of switches back and forth. But again, we hold so much culture and tell our stories and carry it forward through our art, through our festivals, through our events, through whatever we're producing, be it conferences and whatnot. So,
Jason.
Yeah, this is an interesting thought for me because there's the art and the preservation of culture, and then there's who's telling that story, who's disseminating that story, and why. As a person who's in finance, I love art for the sake of art, but also realize as a consumer, if I don't purchase that art, if I don't go to a festival, if I'm not willing to pay this artist for their poem or their painting, how does that get disseminated? So as a person in finance, that's something I'm always trying to think about is how do we invest in those things, but then also make sure that we're disseminating it? Because what ends up happening is at its core, sometimes messages get distorted or watered down to go to the masses, which I don't think is always a bad thing because there needs to be some economic mobility for those artists, but it's something that I think we all got to be conscious of as consumers of what we're purchasing, what we're watching, and why, and how do we do that even more. I think about some things on more of a major scale. There was the food series on Netflix that I thought was great, High Up the Hog. I think I'm sure someone would probably say I was a little watered down here and there, but I thought the way they did it was an amazing story, how they told that. That one comes to mind. We were just talking in the back room, Uncle Nearest, the whiskey, telling the story of one of the black men that, helped develop the I guess, form or the chemistry behind the original Jack Daniels. That's telling a story through a spirit. There's so many stories like that. My boy Lanny with Actively Black and how he's doing some things in the fashion industry. Those are ways that people are taking our culture. I think they're staying true to it and disseminating to the masses. So we have to think about that from the consumer side, and then what it allows is people like me to think about how do I invest in that to go from what is a great local thing, but take it out further, but still empower those originals creators to keep the story true, because when others invest in it or others become the major consumers of it, it's only going to get so pure. And I think that's something we always have to balance is so pure, keeping it for the masses, and what is that right balance, and understand what that means from a financing perspective, but also from a consumer perspective.
So we only have 2 minutes.
All right, so I'm gonna jump on it real quick.
Okay.
So AI comes to mind with this, and not the one that we're talking about right now. I'm talking about the original one, Allen Iverson. So when AI came,
Well played.
So when he came into the league, he changed the league so much that the commissioner put on the dress code, right? So the dress code was, for a minute, it was just weird, tall cats with weird suits, and they didn't really look like much of anything. But then you had Westbrook come in, and then you had Harden come in, then you had LeBron come in, and these guys changed the fashion game. So much so that before a game, you just, it would be commercials, and then you go to the game. They were able to, off of our fashion and our culture, they actually sold that space of walking down, going to the locker room now. So now you're watching cats go to the locker room, and you're wondering what they have on before they even get there. So they sold that media just from something that they were trying to eliminate, and we flipped it. So our culture not only moves past the boundaries, and no matter what they put in front of us, we flip it to a point where we make even more money for them, but not us. And I think that's what we got to flip the paradigm. The money is still going to them.
Just the last thing I'll say on that one, I always joke with people, America's #1 export is black culture. I think that is financially proven. I'm sure I could find some model, but like exporting the culture from hip hop to movies that is creating our communities is probably America's #1 export.
And with that, we're going to expand this to global, right? So I know we've talked about, at a local level. And I wanted to share this because it's really important. In 2050, it is projected that 1 in 4 humans on the planet will be African. So, bouncing off of that, Black creativity is not just an engine, it is capitalism, right? At its core. And everybody getting it except us. So my last question to our panelists. Black creativity is an engine behind much of modern culture, not just black culture. And I think some folks need to, get on the bandwagon because we here. In 2025, the graduating high school class is the most diverse class in U.S. history. So we here already, y'all. I know people trying to blunt that, but we here. How does genres like hip hop, fashion, trends like our streetwear globally, how does this influence, take us to other areas where Black creativity has laid a foundation for popular culture worldwide? In today's context, what is the power of Black creativity globally, from innovation to entrepreneurship? Just?
So I'll say this, because I know we're about to be over time. But if you look historically at music, which is what I probably am on this panel to talk about the most, right? The term pop music is one that has meant a lot of things over the course of music in general. But at its core, it's what's popular right now. People can write pop music, aka the Beatles. That's when it got really popular to say, oh, this is pop music. It became a style. But before then, it just talked about the top 40 records that would be played pretty much regularly in your rotation, right? If you look at the history of music, and whenever black people or people of the diaspora of Africa came up with a genre of music or a new style of music, within a decade, almost all of popular music sounded like it. Almost every time. Hip hop comes out, within 10 years, almost all of pop radio has a rapper on it or a hip hop beat. You look at EDM in the early 2000s from techno. Techno goes to EDM, travels to Europe, becomes a new thing, and now look at what that sounds like. All of pop music sounded like that 10 years later. You look at what's happening now with Amapiano, reggaeton, Afro beats. 10 years later, everything sounds like that globally. This is not just a United States thing. This happens all over the world, and the diasporas have begun to collapse into even smaller pockets. So where you get what you hear in like African music right now is starting to replicate all over the place in smaller and different versions. And Amapiano is its own vibe, but it's not way off from what you hear in Afrobeats. It's not way off from what you hear in reggaeton. You know, and these are in different parts of the world, but they all come from the same rhythms, the same feelings, the same spiritual center. And I think that is an important thing to look at, even when you talk about population growth. It's like cultures and globalization is moving the needle forward. And the more our influence takes hold in popular culture, the more important it will be for us to take, I hate to use the hot term, but ownership over how that stuff is discussed in the world. We may not always be the most popular artists in the music that we influence, but we should have more ownership in how that influence is distributed. You know, we don't always have to be at the front, but we need to be in the mix. And that's the thing I will leave you guys with.
I think we need to be in the front. So I want to thank you all for this panel. Too bad we couldn't get into more. I skipped over some of our questions, but we are happy to chat after. Thank you.
Thank you.